this video will explain the Catholic moral teaching about lying. But first, imagine that it's 1942. You're in a house of Nazi-occupied Europe, and under your floorboards, there's a Jewish family, terrified, hungry, and they're betting their lives that you're a good man and you're a man of your word. And suddenly, there's a heavy knock at your door, and you open it, and you see a Gestapo officer standing right there in front of you. He looks you in the eyes, and he asks, "Are you hiding the Jewish family that we're looking for in this house?" And what do? If you say yes, you just signed their death warrant. And if you say no, well, you just told a lie. Now, most guys use this story to prove that lying is fine whenever things get tricky. But as a Catholic man, this isn't a game. This is the moment where truth and love come together at 100 miles an hour. And you feel it in your own house, don't you? You look at your kids and your wife, whenever they ask you a hard question, you might get that heaviness in your heart or that knot in your stomach. And you're thinking to yourself, if I tell the whole truth, I'm going to crush them. But if I hide it, am I a liar? And it's really hard to admit to say this out loud, but every man has eventually asked himself, okay, when is it okay to lie? And the answer isn't what you think. It's a lot tougher, and it's a lot better, and it will change the way that you see truth and lies for the rest of your life if you watch to the end of this video. Now, I had to personally face this in the hospital room when my son was fighting cancer. And I realized the struggle isn't actually lie or don't lie. It's something much deeper. It's truth versus protecting other people's feelings. But before I tell you what happened in the hospital, you need to understand that this isn't just a once-in-a-lifetime Nazis knocking on your door scenario. It's the hidden battleground of a man's everyday life. And Catholic men live in this tension every single day. It's not about winning an argument online on X or Facebook. It's about the people sitting at your dinner table, the ones that God put in your care. You will feel the pressure when your kids ask if the family's going to be okay, even while they see the stack of bills piling up on your desk that you can't pay. And when your wife asks you to take on something that you haven't handled before, you know the raw truth is going to wound her heart. Your teenager asks you about the mistakes that you made in your past, and you wonder if being too honest will either help them or mess them up, like what happened to you. Every time you feel that urge to soften the blow, you're on a moral battlefield. And there's no manual for this. The world tells us that white lies are fine, as long as they make life easier, but we don't answer to the world. We answer to Jesus and the church that he gave us. And when you look at what the church actually teaches, you realize you were given a set of tools that most people don't even know exist. So let's look at what the big dogs of Christianity have to say, starting with St. Paul. And he says in the Bible, speak the truth with love. And that's simple. But there's a balance. He doesn't say, blurt out the truth and who cares who gets hurt. He also doesn't say, just be nice and ignore the facts. It's truth in love, like two wings on a plane. If you rip one off, the plane's going down. But let's not forget about St. Thomas Aquinas. He's the heavyweight champion of Catholic logic and morality. He says a lie is speaking against what you know is true just to deceive someone. He doesn't give an easy out. He says every lie is disordered, and it breaks the way God made us. Now, if this was the end of the story, we'd be stuck. We'd have to tell the Nazis, yeah, there is a Jewish family in my basement. But the church is deeper than that. The Catechism gives us a secret weapon at 2489, and it says, no one is bound to reveal the truth to someone who doesn't have the right to know it. And read that again. There's a massive difference between telling a lie and keeping a secret. Truth is sacred, and sometimes the wrong person asking the wrong question at the wrong time has no right to the full story. So that's the answer to the Nazi at your front door. You're not allowed to lie, but that Nazi has no right to the truth about the people in your basement. You could tell him something else that will lead him astray, but that is not a lie, and you could get creative with that answer. But here's where that work gets messy. That works for a Nazi, but what about your family? Do they have the right to know the truth? How do you handle it when they're standing right in front of you, but they aren't ready for the full weight of that truth? And this is exactly what I learned in the hospital room. When my son had cancer, the doctor looked at me and said that my son had an 87% chance of survival. And I felt that all at once, the hope, the terror, the confusion. And the doctor at that moment didn't lie to me. But she didn't also promise that my son would live. She gave me the truth inside the mess. And she didn't say, oh, he'll be fine, don't worry about it. That would have been a lie. But she also didn't say, get ready for his funeral. And that would have tore me up. That would have destroyed me. But she said, here's the truth, and I'm walking with you through it. Seeing that doctor and how she handled the truth changed how I saw my role as a father. And I realized that God rarely gives us certainty, but he gives us truth, hope, and work to do. When I went home to my wife and my daughter, I had to choose, how much do I tell them? If I say too much, I'm going to destroy them with the possibility of my son dying. But if I say too little, I'm faking, I'm lying. But that tension right there, that's prudence. And prudence isn't just a fancy word for wisdom in action. It asks, what's the right thing to say in the right way at the right time? It's not about being a coward. It's about handling the truth with care. So if you want to see this in action, you don't have to look for a doctor. You just have to look at Jesus. He didn't tell everyone everything. Sometimes he was blunt, sometimes he was quiet, and he wasn't scared of the truth. But he refused to use it as a weapon unless the Pharisee deserved it. So let's bring this home with the stuff that actually keeps you up at night. For example, a money scare. Your kids might ask you, or your wife might ask you, are we okay financially? Do we have enough money? And if you say everything's fine, everything's perfect, while you're drowning in debt, that's fake peace. That's a lie. But if you tell them you might be homeless by the end of next month, you'd crush them with that truth. But a good Catholic loving answer is this. We're in a tough spot right now, but God has never failed us, and he won't now. And we're working on it, and we're going to get through this as a family, and Jesus will always take care of us. And that's the truth, and that's love, and that's hope, and that's being a good leader. Now let's talk about your past. Let's say you have an older kid, you have a teen that asks you about your old sins, and you don't want to dump your trash on them. They don't need that weight. But you don't want to pretend that you're a saint either. You want to give them truthful wisdom. So you tell them that sin is a lie, and it's never paid off. And God's mercy is the only reason why you're a man standing today. But do you see the pattern here? We aren't looking for permission to lie. We're looking for the strength to provide the truth without breaking the people we love. But we have to address the elephant in the room. What happens when we fail and we lie anyway? And let's be real, sometimes we're going to lie, sometimes we're going to fail because we're scared and flawed humans. And St. Thomas Aquinas says that fear can make guilt smaller, but it doesn't make any lie good. If a man lies to save a life, God's mercy is greater than the lie, and he knows your heart, but don't ever pretend that the lie was good or holy. Because the second we think we have to lie to get a good result, we're saying that God isn't big enough to handle the truth, and we're trying to be God instead of letting God be God. The fight isn't, can I lie here? The fight is, am I man enough to be honest and still be loving to the people around me? At the end of the day, the question isn't, when can I lie? The question is, can I carry the truth without hurting the people that I love? Truth without love is a weapon, and love without truth is fake. The cross is the only place where both survived. So if you're a Catholic man, don't look for shortcuts. Look for strength in Jesus. The strength to talk even if it hurts your pride. The strength to be quiet if it protects your family. And the strength to say, I'm sorry when you mess up. Because heaven isn't for the smart guys who found the loophole. It's for the men like you and me who stood in the tension and chose to be like Jesus. And when a man learns how to do this, you don't have to ask when he's allowed to lie. You just look at him and see. That's what the truth looks like when the Holy Spirit guides him. And that's the real tension.